I've just read Supercommunicators, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 most valuable lessons when it comes to enhancing your communication skills. The first thing really is to make the conversation about them. You have to be genuinely curious about the other person and what they're trying to express, because you need to understand them. Listening is not going to be enough. But first, let me tell you that most people aren't super communicators. In fact, they're really far from it. That's why if you put in just a little bit more effort than most people do, you will already come across more at ease with your own communication. Because you see, the issue with language is to articulate your thoughts and emotions and convey them using words. That's really hard to do. And your goal as a good communicator is to make it easier for the people in front of you to do so. We're always told, listen to others. But I'd go a step further and I'd tell you that you need to actively focus on trying to understand what they're saying, because listening and understanding are not the same thing. I could listen to someone talk about quantum physics without understanding it. And after years of working as a fitness coach with clients, I found that the most impactful thing I can do is to listen to my clients and work with them to understand what they're truly trying to express and achieve. And just by doing that, just by genuinely trying to understand someone else's message, the dynamic of the conversation will shift entirely. And that's the first principle of the book. Make the conversation about the other person. People will enjoy talking about themselves. That's for sure. But your goal is to create a space for them to be able to do so safely. In order to do that, you need to genuinely care about understanding their message. The mistake to avoid here is to focus too much on yourself, to become self-centered, which we all do, by the way, especially when we're stressed or anxious about talking to the other person. Because many people who are in a conversation are caught up in their thinking and what they're going to say or do next. And most of the time when you're in social context, social setting, and you're scared of being judged or misinterpreted, you're going to do that. You're going to focus too much on yourself. And in doing so, you will cloud the conversation with your own biases. And it will show, as it may seem that you're listening, but you're not really present. I mean, think about your own experiences, for example. Superior communicators aren't the people that you see. They're just the type of people that create a safe space, making you feel heard and understood. So that's the first lesson. Be curious about the other person, about what they bring to the table, about what they're trying to say, about the true message they're trying to convey, and value their insights, because this is precious to them. The only catch is, though, and I talked about it, I repeated the word genuinely, because you cannot fake this. You have to be genuinely interested in what the other person has to say in order for it to work. The second thing is to ask the right questions. Being a superior communicator doesn't mean that you can read people's minds. Right? You have to ask questions, and a lot of them, to understand the subtlety and the nuances of what the other person is trying to say. Because a lot of people aren't good at, as I said, articulating their thoughts, so it's even harder for them to nuance their thoughts. And asking questions will naturally position you as the listener. But of course, now you need to be careful, because there are questions that are more effective than others. If you're trying to enhance the level of the conversation, to deepen it, you need to avoid questions that close the conversations. Those that can only be answered by a binary answer, which can be yes or no, this or that, whatever. I call them lawyer's questions. They're useful when you need to know exactly one piece of information. Did you do that? Yes or no? That's good. If you're the boss. For example, if you ask someone, do you prefer blue or red? You leave no room for other alternatives. The way you frame the question directs and limits the choice. Leave enough room for the other person to express their true opinion. Instead, you're just guiding the answer. And if your goal is to be a good communicator, using these types of closed-ended questions is going to be a trap. So you need to be careful, and you only need to do that when you need quick answers and precise information, because they will cut off the conversation. They won't deepen the relationship that you have with the other person. Now, that being said, on the other hand, there are open-ended questions, which invites the other person to open up and reveal their personality to the world. These questions are open by design, meaning that the other person has the freedom to choose what to say and to choose the direction of the conversation. If you're asking someone, what's your favorite color and why? No, it's much more complex than just choosing between blue and red, because they have a panel of different options that you need to choose. It's when you cannot predict the answer. A good open-ended question is when you leave them the choice of leading the conversation. And they might say something like, my favorite color is red because my first car was red, or because, I don't know, it represents passion to them because it's a Valentine's Day or something like that. And from there, what you want to do is picking up on their responses and just elaborate on it. I'd be like, oh, red is your favorite color because your first car was red, is that right? And just by restating that, 90% of the people will start sharing more personal details and stories about their lives. And when you create this space, when you open enough room for a conversation, people will naturally tend to see you as a good communicator and assume you're confident in yourself, which is the most important thing if you want to be good at communication. Because a good communicator is a natural communicator, which I'm not when I'm talking to a camera, for example. So focus on asking those open-ended questions because they will let the other person know that they can open up and that they can be comfortable with you because you're not trying to control the direction of the conversation. This approach opens up a conversational space where the both of you will want to stay and return to, as it's nice talking to someone that really creates that bubble. So for sure, if you do that for other people, they'll want to talk to you. Now, this technique is taken straight from the book. And in my opinion, if you had to take one thing away from this video, it would be it. So this is called looping for understanding. It's a simple 3-step protocol to ensure you're truly understanding what the other person is saying and to creating that safe bubble that we talked about. Here's how it works. You start by asking a question, then you formulate it using your own words, and then you ask them if you got it right. It's really not that complicated and it's really effective. Let's take back our example. Person A says, why is red your favorite color? Person B answers, because when I was an undergrad, I had to commute to the campus outside of the city and I needed a car. So I bought one and it was red. Red is your favorite color because it was the color of the first car you bought when you were an undergrad. Is that right? They're going to be, on paper, this may sound silly. Why just repeat what the other person has said? But they're going to be convinced that you're listening and understanding them because you are. You're saying the same thing that they just said, just reformulate a little bit so that you don't sound like a parrot, but you're exactly using those same words. So for their brains, you're understanding them, you're listening to them. And it's powerful because if you start observing the conversations that people are having around you, you'll quickly realize that most people aren't paying attention to the conversation that they're having. They're just thinking about them. And in a world where most people are stuck with themselves during a conversation, by restating what the other person just said, you will stand out as the guy who genuinely listens. And this is especially effective for people that are reserved or introverted, as it encourages them to open up, build a rapport, and need that relationship with you and them, between you and them. Another benefit of this method is that it will bring you closer to their true perspectives. Sometimes people will correct you, even though you repeated the exact same words that they used. This happened to me a lot, and then I understood that it wasn't a bad thing. It's very good. Because if they do, it might be a sign that you might not be fully seeing the entirety of their viewpoint, and that their correction will clarify the way you perceive their conversation, what they're saying, or that they don't know themselves and they're just correcting their own words. In both cases, this is good because it brings more clarity, but you have to be able to handle the fact that they might say no to you, even though you said the exact same thing. They might be still correcting you. Okay, don't take it personally. And this technique is really effective, really useful and helpful when it comes to close relationships, where your own connection to the other person may affect and is affecting your perception, making it harder for you to see their perspective on the situation, which is so important if you want to resolve issues, for example. But use this method selectively. It's not about, again, being a parrot. It's about ensuring that you're capturing exactly kind of the essence of the message that people are trying to tell you. During emotional discussions, this is where you want to use it. When you want the other person to feel heard, validated, and that you're genuinely trying to understand what they're saying. Now it's time to use the law of reciprocity. So this principle implies that after someone receives a personal feeling, memory, or pieces of information from you, they will be compelled to share something back in return. And in his book, Charles talks about him as one of the most powerful forces in the world. But timing is everything. It's key when it comes to the law of reciprocity. And again, you cannot fake it. If you want to make it work, you have to be honest. And you have to share something valuable and emotionally resonant for them to relate to. And in exchange for those words, they'll naturally want to share a similar experience of their own to match the exchange. This principle shows up everywhere, in psychology, in marketing, politics, everywhere. For example, in marketing, they use the law of reciprocity for gifts. So they're giving gifts to clients or potential clients, and then the clients are more inclined to return something. And this response is rooted in your nature as a social creature. Because by instinct, we seek to bond, belong, and connect with others, which is why your brain follows this law. Think about it. You're probably already doing it with friends without even realizing it. For example, those late nights when you guys talk about your personal experiences and you open up to talk about your feelings, for example. You share something, then they share something, then it's this dynamic is really interesting, and it only happens if that bubble that we've been talking about, that safe space, has been established. Now, by just understanding how it works, you can leverage it to improve communication and build solid relationships when it comes to talking to people. So start by sharing something real and let the other person feel free to contribute their own perspective to the conversation. For instance, when people ask me the generic, "How are you doing today?" I make an effort to give a genuine answer instead of a robotic response. And I might say something like, "Oh, so today I'm kind of tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night, and I'm a little stressed out by the call I have to make this afternoon," for example. And by saying that, you kind of break the social norm of polite automatic replies. And now, since they see how you truly feel, they're more likely to bond and share something personal in return. Like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm tired too." And here, we're creating that space, that bubble. And the last thing is to look at them. You gotta pay attention to other people. This is one of my favorite topics, but Duhigg, in his book, he just mentioned it briefly. But I believe this is something fundamental, because in addition to what other people are saying, you also need to look and pay attention to their nonverbal language. Nonverbal communications is very complex and covers a lot of grounds, including, posture, tone of voice, facial expressions, and much more. But you don't need to be an expert in it in order to be able to use it and understand it. Just by priming your brain to really examine, to really observe and analyze people, just by paying attention, you'll again be ahead of most people that are just looking at their phones while they're talking to someone. In fact, it's a natural instinct. Your brain is already wired to pick up on nonverbal cues because it's a survival mechanism. You do it subconsciously. But the goal here is to make it kind of a conscious process so that you can use those pieces of information because they're encoded in your conscious mind and not just the subconscious one. Are the people leaning forward? Are the people using their hands to talk because they're confident, or maybe they're really stressed, they're really tensed up? Are they seeking eyes contact or avoiding it? I don't know. Are they reaching the doorknob when they're talking to you? It's difficult to isolate just one gesture or one expression, because nonverbal communication is about the big picture, the overall scene. It's not about the, oh, I touched my hair, so I'm lying, or that kind of things. That may indicate tension, or that may indicate some kind of emotional response, but it's rarely a direct cause and effect relationship, as nonverbal cues are just the body's way of expressing emotions to the outside world. But if someone isn't meeting your eyes, has their chin down like this and the hand on the doorknob while you're talking to them about their current performance, the conversation, you know it's probably not going too well. And when you combine all of those nonverbal cues with the verbal insights you've gathered, then you have a full picture about the other person's perspectives, making it truly easier for you guys to connect and understand your own motivations, making it easier for you to understand them and to appear as a good communicator. Anyway, this video is a bit different from what I usually do, so let me know what you think. And as always, I hope this helps. Trust the process.